Because today, ladies, women, beautiful sisters, we're here to talk about how we elevate ourselves as entrepreneurs and engage with life. And as we've just discussed, we're all on different time zones, so immediately life situations come to influence what's going on around us. Um, I'm very fascinated by how women do things different. I hope you agree with me. And when I say that, I mean different to each other, but also different to men who have designed the world. Um, and it's quite interesting in terms of time zones and changing the clocks, things like that. Which apparently in Nevada, where I'm living, they might be changing the spring to not being an hour ahead and not being changing. And of course, what it does is it causes a lot of chaos in people's minds who don't understand time zones. Now, I believe all of you will understand time zones because we're all in different time zones. I come from London originally, so my family and a lot of my contacts are in England. And so I'm always conscious that it's 8 hours ahead. And I'm always fascinated when my daughter says, "Oh, how many hours behind are you?" Because she doesn't live in time zone. She only knows that I'm somewhere else. She exists in a local time. And so time and energy in life is what I believe comes into women's life. And especially as entrepreneurs and business people, we have to think about all of these things. We don't actually sort of divide business and life. So that's my kind of first point of us to think about the stories, which is about why life matters to women entrepreneurs. And I'm delighted to have Thierry join us. So we have man on board. And I'm also delighted to welcome Neema, who is my co-host today. And Neema and I, of course, I'm on Pacific time and Neema's on Tanzania time. And we do some work together, elevating young adults and helping them to ignite their entrepreneurial spirit. And we also are looking at the idea of a joint custody world. How do we develop a world ahead where men and women get round the table and share the custodial responsibility of the world, given that we do see the world very different? And one of my feelings, and I'd really love your thoughts, is that, and I have said this for many, many years, is that women have always brought life into work and men don't. Men go to work, do the work, and then come back and decide what to do with the profit or largesse or stress that they've gained at work. Whereas um, we actually wind it all in together. And I may have told this story before, but I remember in my experience in Malaysia, I was talking about how women were multitasking and excellent at multiple things. And this Chinese gentleman said to me, "Oh, I do multitasking," very proudly. So I, without a glimpse of dismay or anything, I said, "Well, that's jolly good. Tell me how you do it." And he said, "Well, I have a lot of jobs to do and I get them all done." So I said, "Well, that's not how women do things. I hope you agree with me. We have a task list and we do them all at the same time." That's my experience that because we are circular in our nature, we do business and life and we wind it in together. We have things that we think about and do, and they're sometimes about life, sometimes about business. So one of my quotes for today is that women mean business, but women don't need to be mean to be in business. Because I believe what we bring to business and entrepreneurship is a beautiful sense of compassion and care and nurturing and
Not
kindness.
here for some reason.
That's so true.
Hmm.
Hi there, Mona. Oh, and we bring all those things in as well as being incredibly competent and strategic and dare I say clever. So today, I'm going to just ask Nima to give us a few words about her view on how life matters for business growth. And then let's go around the room and listen to your thoughts on that. And how do we initiate a world where life matters are really taken on board seriously in the, dare I say, the boardrooms of life and the decision-making places. So Neema, give us your thoughts on this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pauline. And yeah, so for those who don't know me, I'm Neema Mleli. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Integrated Empowerment Initiatives. That's an NGO that is operating in Tanzania and all of Africa. But also I'm the executive director for Global Chamber Tanzania and the vice president for African Women in Herbs and Spices, and recently a G100 country chair in the masculinity wing with Dr. Pauline. So my thoughts in all of this, I will start by sharing uh, women entrepreneurs who turned personal struggles into innovative business solutions. So one of the things, for example, in the work that we do, you find women have overcome financial barriers to start and scale businesses. Many women entrepreneurs have faced financial constraints and lack access to formal loans, and also access to, health, and also so through trainings, women have learned to manage cash flows, separate personal and business finances, and access funding. As a result, they have grown from small informal businesses to registered enterprises and expanding into local and international markets, which this is very key in the beginning, especially in my culture, is that most men are the ones who were dominating the business world, and women were left home, in spite that we have basic knowledge of budgeting in the family, even preparing the food and managing the house expenses and etc. And the funny thing is, in Tanzania, most women are men. When men get married, it is shown that they excel more. And why do they excel? Because they have someone who is supporting them to manage things and also to grow their finances and invest more and growing. But then we have always first, cultural norms like limit of decision-making power in businesses and also programs. But now we have gained, I can see most of us women are starting to gain confidence in negotiating skills. We have also been advocating for, inheriting land and those kind of things. But then in creating the custody world, this is something personal for me, advocating it, because I say, if we have been talking, yes, a lot. I love the quote of Dr. Pauline, where you say we've always talked about equity, but now in the equality, but now we need to talk about, working by side together to join that harmonious work. We need to, not to be in the shadow anymore, but working together so that we can create, a harmonious world in business. So these are my thoughts, and just building collaborative ecosystem, strengthening association, because we need men we need men in also to work with us, and to work with us by respecting each other in what we do. So this is what I have, Dr. Pauline, and back to you.
Thank you, Neema. And I think that set the scene as well. That we do need men. My work is all about how we balance the different traits that we bring together, because then we get the maximum when we work together. And it isn't always for men to understand us men, just to be adding value. So let's go around the room and hear your thoughts. I've just got a bit of chaos around here, so I'm going to turn my I don't know, because
Okay, then. Like I said, you don't.
Who would like to start? Rhonda. Rhonda, would you like to share?
Okay. Thank you, first of all, for having us today. I'm really pleased to be here. I've just started with Global Chamber at the beginning of January, so this is my first chance to be at this particular meeting with you ladies. That's very nice. When you were talking about women being able to do multiple things, I live very close to Neanderthal in Germany. And the thing that the people in the Neanderthal Museum always tell you when you go there is the reason that women are so good at what we now call multitasking was, and that men were so good at hierarchical things, was in the good old days of the Neanderthal people, the men were all going out to hunt, and they had to have a plan before they went. And there was one person who gave like in the military, there's one officer, who gives all the commands, and everybody else has to be quiet because they'd scare away the animals they're trying to get to. So the men organize themselves ahead of time, and then they go out and do things, and there's no discussion and there's no anything. The ladies who were not going out in the field, who were staying in the cave, and going out to pick the berries and planting the food and taking care of the children and doing all of those things, had to decide among themselves who was going to help do what with whom, because they had to do all these different things. And the children couldn't just be running around in the forest alone while they were out picking berries or something. It all had to be organized. So this is something very, very old within our bodies and within our brain structure. And this is something that we've been doing so for so many million years for so well, ladies. That's why we're so good at it. Yeah, this is a very ancient thing that we have for ourselves. And that's a huge help, because that means that we understand what it means to ask other people for help, because we've always had to do that. And there were sometimes men that maybe were included, like maybe older gentlemen who couldn't go out to hunt anymore or something. But the whole point is we understand that coordinated effort is so important, which is why in my company, we believe so much in co-creating solutions, because that's exactly what we need to do. None of us are as good alone as all the wisdom that's here in the room. And I'm really pleased today that I can join you ladies and give you some insights into Neanderthal since it's in my backyard, and maybe give us some background ideas about why we are the way we are, and that it's a very natural thing, and we should be very happy that we are that way. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Rhonda. And I think it's very much my thought process is we are who we are, and let's enjoy the fact that we do bring different things. So I study what I call gender dynamics intelligence, and I have a map here, which is the map of all the characters, which I will take you through in a minute. But essentially, we are different. So let's listen to our own stories. And I just wanted to share this book. And if you haven't read it, I would really recommend this. It's called Invisible Women, and it's called Data Bias in a World Designed for Men. And it's written by a woman. It's very big. I have to confess I haven't read it all yet, but the bits I've read, it's a very good book to just understand how we've got to where we are, along the lines of what you said, Rhonda. Historically, there are systems in the world that if men designed them and they didn't count women in, that now we are dealing with those and we can change them. But it's having a conversation not about fighting for things, but actually sometimes just being strategic and logical about why things are the way they are. So let me give you one example from the book. Is about transport systems are designed for men to go to work and park their car in a car park. They're not designed for women who might have a pram, a bag, getting the nanny, putting the kids in school, going along walkways, getting on buses. And hence, there's sometimes in bad weather, there are more accidents for women going to work than there are for men, which cause a cost to a country. I mean, there's lots of laws of unexpected, what's it, the law of unintended consequences. If we're going to change something, we need to get into a conversation and value what we're bringing to the table. just dealing with some noise here. So who would like to share any story that is where you've dealt with life and kept your business going, but it's been challenging as a woman. Erica, you've got your hand up.
Yes, a really vivid story for me was during the time of COVID, during the pandemic. I had two children at home doing online schooling. I'm self-employed and I work full time and then some. And my husband works in a hospital network. And I clearly remember saying to him, why is it that there is just this assumption that I will stay home and make sure that they get through their schooling online instead of you? Like, he had to go to the office. I mean, it wasn't closed because he's in a hospital, but it was just that assumption. It wasn't even a question. And I was really offended by that because, he works in IT. He could easily work from home and he still gets paid and he has vacation time and sick time, whereas I have none of that. So that to me was frustrating. And the assumption was, well, that we just can't take off, we have to be here. And I'm like, well, are the kids going to teach themselves or what are we going to do? So that's one thing that I wanted to point out. And I really appreciate and like what Rhonda and Neema said. And it's true, Rhonda, looking back at all of the history of how we are, it's interesting when you understand it. And if I may just take a minute to share that I feel, having all daughters and hearing their conversations with their friends and just the language that girls use over boys, women use over men, it's either overcompensation to justify that they're equal to men, or I hear a lot of the conversation is that I'm sorry, oh, I look terrible, the self-deprecating conversations. And I'm a huge advocate of choosing your words wisely
Yes.
and not competing with men, which is why I love all the things that you teach and share, Dr. Pauline. It's not competition. It's just quietly assuming your role and your place and showing your value without either apologizing for it or having to take a stand and bulldoze your way into it.
Excellent, Erica. And those of you who don't know, I've written a book called The Power of Authentic Harmony. I hope you'll all buy it. But I put some quotes in here. One of them is, make no assumptions, tell no lies. In the moment, always be ready to respond to the unknown, the impossible, and the magical that will make possible all that you wish for. I think so much of the day we do make assumptions, and that one of the things to do, as you say, is to ask, like ask for clarity. Did I hear that's what you said? And did you actually hear what I said? Because most of the time we don't actually hear. There's a wonderful statement, you're not hearing what I really meant to say. And I studied this a lot with my map. And, some people are always saying, why are we doing that? Other people saying, what are we doing? And who is doing it? And that all comes into this mix. So thank you, Erica.
You're
Now
welcome.
I can see Siobhan there on the screen, nodding away. And I'm going to invite you to say, because you've been nodding away. I know some people aren't on screen, but share with us.
Good morning, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, it's nice to see you, Erica. I'm Siobhan Shaw. I'm the co-founder of Growing to Give. We're an agricultural nonprofit. We develop community farms and gardens. And Erica, I think we're going to be up in Las Vegas soon doing something very big.
Fantastic.
And I've been listening, Dr. Pauline. And I think that it's because I host a show. I host a show on health and well-being called Real Talk. It's a small show. A friend of mine created it and then found out that I had experience hosting a show and asked me if I would volunteer to do it. So I've been volunteering for a year or so. And anybody who wants to come on and talk about something related to health and well-being, I'd be happy to have you guys on as guests. But what I found was somebody reached out to me who listens to the show, or watches the show, I should say. And she said, you are listening to what the guest is saying. And she said, you don't see that very often. You know, somebody who's interviewing somebody is just waiting for you, the guest to finish, and then they're ready with their next question. And I think that that's something that women do very well. If we're aware of that, we can settle into ourselves and we can listen. And then you have a better conversation. Your conversation is the game changer. It really is, because if you're not listening to somebody, and so in our relationships in business and in with men, there's a lot of times my husband's got his headphones on and I could be talking to him and he's not listening. He looks at me and go, what? And yes, I do that to him as well. If I'm busy, I'm not paying attention. But if you can break that, you turn that into a relationship builder. It improves your trust. People see the authentic you and they also feel respected, and I think that's so important in business. And I just wanted to say we're not equal to men. Somebody mentioned that, and I was like, yes, that's correct. We're not equal to men. John and I, we don't have children, but we have a typical, he's a man and he has things that he does really well as a man because of his physique or the way his brain works. He's brilliant. And I was brought up in a patriarchal home. My mother was a farmer. She had come from a wealthy family, privileged, and then she met my dad and she became a farmer. And what I learned so much from her, but she had to look after my father because he was a war amp from the Second World War. So missing a leg, wasn't able to do the things that most men could do on a farm. He could drive the tractor, but he's not out in the field heaving the hay bales up onto the wagon. And so she took on a lot of those responsibilities that a man normally would. And that, that's in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Like she showed her daughters, and there were 4 of us, and her son, that a woman could do anything a man could do, basically. But there were things that she couldn't do, even though she could tinker on that tractor and try to fix it. But sometimes she needed somebody to come in and something was too heavy, or right. And it's the same with John and I. People will say, why doesn't John do the laundry? And I was like, I can shrink things well enough. Thank you very much. I don't need John to do the laundry, because it would, I have a way of doing that. I like my clothes folded a certain way. I like them to be put away in certain places. I like my color coded closets. And so, without going into more detail, I just wanted to say that I think that it's that power of authenticity that we bring to the table. And women in agriculture, I write a lot about it. I have a newsletter on LinkedIn, and I think that we are a collaborative group as opposed to a competitive group.
Well, I think, yes, thank you. And thank you, Siobhan. That in my experience, if you go back to the 1900s, and I'm not expecting you to, I'm not that old, but I'm fairly old. But in the 1900s, men would be saying, I don't understand why women want the vote, because they're changing the natural order. Now, if they truly believed that was the natural order, then I can understand why they thought that we were being very rebellious. Now, we've got a long way further now, 125 plus years later. But my theory is, and this is what I wrote in my book, is that we need to let go of the fight for equality and look for the fact that we are magnificently different and unique as men and women, and different types of men and different types of women are also unique. So we need to find out what we add to the party. And some men, my husband loves doing all the washing, clothes washing and washing in the kitchen, and he always complains if I wash up things in the kitchen because I don't do it good enough. So I just let him do it now. And I think it is about having the conversation. A lot of my work is about the subline on here is magical conversations that transform the world. And just there were three key things there: conversations without judgment and without assumptions, conversations with passion and not anger, and conversations with freedom to decide what we all do together rather than coercion by anybody within the group. So the old-fashioned, not old-fashioned, but the traditional way of KPIs and rushing to action isn't always necessarily the way we find the best solution. And so having these conversations, that's where we go. Coco, glad you were here. Sorry you had to go. And Erica, you've got your hand up.
So sorry, just a quick note, listening to Shawan and to you about conversations, given that the ladies here participating in this group, we are so we're just a dynamic group of people, and I would like to put in a plug for us to be advocates for more conversations to happen, not through technology, not through AI. There's nothing wrong with it. We can use it, but it has become a replacement for conversations, and I don't agree with it. And I think we should be encouraging face-to-face or voice-to-voice conversation amongst everyone for better understanding, because this technology and socials have become a platform for people to hide behind and not feel comfortable face-to-face. So they're missing all the nonverbal communication that transpires.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing is that, as you see on my tagline, it says conversation game changer. Men see conversations in different ways to women, as do different types of women within conversations. So I'm not saying it does that, but having conversations isn't always it's not always the same for everybody. We just mentioned, my husband, when he's doing this, he doesn't hear what I'm saying. That there's lots of different ways conversations can occur. And one of the main things is having the conversation, but listening to when somebody seems to be tuning out. And I've often studied when I look at my map that sometimes men will tune out when women talk too much because they're not working at the same frequency. And often when women chatter too much to each other, we don't get to solutions. But the idea of actually being in that conversation together and looking for a joint custody world means that we need to blend in the different aspects that come together of life and business. So I was going to ask Mona to come in and say a few
Yeah,
words because, oh, Neema, you want to say something?
no, as just in the concept of custody world, for me, I would say we need to create a supportive and sustainable, thriving ecosystem that can work for both of us. So I think we need to create that system, even the system of, conversation and, understanding what to say to the other and in a respectful way. So there's a lot of, uh, misjudgment around us when somebody's in the conversation, knowing the culture, how to say it and how to do it, you know, because in some of us we've grown taught to be very submissive, and which is not a bad thing, but then there's a way that when you know you talk, you are supposed to, you know, not talk this way to your husband. You're not supposed to talk this way because I'm a man. I'm a man, do not talk. I have said, I am staying. So someone is leading you. So there's a way we need to build an ecosystem that really works.
Yes. And I think this is really important because we're all coming from different cultures. I just want to thank Mona for her message because she's driving, and I'm glad you're enjoying the conversation. If any of you want to say anything, you know, put your hand up on the thing. One of the things I feel is that sometimes conversations do need to be decision-making conversations, directive conversations. Sometimes they need to be seeding a future conversation. It's very variable. One of the things I think is that men are much more straightforward. I interviewed 55 men back in 2018 around the My Too agenda. And I asked them, what do you think men think about men thinking? And it was very interesting because they all said, we like to be straightforward, we like to get things done, you know, it was very clear. And when I asked them about women, I said, what would you advise women to do to manage men? And they all said, oh my God, I never thought about that. Oh, well, tell them to remember that we're very straightforward. We don't want to be seen as a threat in the Me Too region. And we don't want to be smothered or mothered. We just want to be valued and loved because women are complex and we're simple in the sense of directness. Now, when I mentioned this piece of research, and this was fairly consistent over the 55 men who were varied, they were action men and thinker feeler men, but that was their overall conclusion. But when I suggested this results to a groups of women, some women said, oh yeah, I could see that. And some women said, oh, don't worry, Pauline, I'll go and sort them out. Now, that's not necessarily what the men were saying. They didn't want sorting out, they wanted understanding and to know that they were different. And they actually really loved working with women. They just weren't sure how to deal with them sometimes because we were thinking differently. And essentially, we're thinking circular and they're thinking straight line. And that's a very simplistic generalization. But if we understand that, then we look at how the straightness and the circle go together, because that's where the magic mix comes. And it is about how do we listen to each other and how do we stop ourselves when we go, no, 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 I'm right, you're wrong. Because as soon as we go, I'm right, you're wrong, whether we're male or female, we come to an impasse. So that's where I think we're moving into an AI world. We're moving into post-COVID hybrid, doing things differently. I believe it's time for women to really come together. But we also need to remember, as Neema pointed out, the different cultures. Now, I worked in Malaysia for 4 years, and there's again a different culture to the UK or to the USA. And I really got to understand that in the culture where the overriding religion is that the man is more empowered than the woman, but the woman could still be strong and competent, and the men would value them when you got that conversation right. And so it's about, to me, the male-female partnership. I don't know whether any of you are dancers or any of you partner dancing. If you're in a partner dance, somebody has to lead. Now, traditionally, it's a male or the stronger, but there has to be one who's just, otherwise you're fighting. So for me, it's about how do we, sometimes the women lead, sometimes the men lead, but we're actually balancing it like this rather than going like that all the time. So that's where I feel we become a joint custody world, but we also need to take advice on the cultural overlay, as in Tanzania is different to the UK, is different to Germany, is different to Dubai, is different to wherever we are. So would I don't know whether Demetrius, you're on here, or Larissa, you would like to say a few words?
Good
Hi
morning.
there.
Hi there. Um, I think that I love what the gentleman told you, because I know this instinctively from my husband. You know what I mean? I know that I'm gonna ask him something and he's just gonna get right to the point, and I'm going to talk about how I feel about it and why it's important. And after I've, basically started that conversation, he's on his phone, he's already doing something else. But I never thought about it in like a business meeting, say like a business negotiation, and how that works. And I'm like, as you were talking, I was sitting here wondering, do I do the same thing? Which I know we're creatures of habit. So I'm thinking, like, do I do the same thing when I'm in a meeting, when I'm talking to men, that I do when I'm talking to my husband? And how can I, like, if that's how I am, that's how I am, right? I'm old enough that I'm not really interested in changing who I am.
Yeah.
But I am interested in being more effective. And so what kind of, and I'd be interested to hear from you all, what kind of clues or techniques can we give ourselves so that, there's something to say, Demetrius, you're doing it again. Because I may not intrinsically recognize that I'm doing that. I feel like I'm doing it right now. I may not intrinsically recognize that I'm going around this circle, because I sort of feel like people have to understand why I'm saying what I'm saying before I actually say it. So I'd be interested in any techniques that you all have for doing that, knowing that men they will just hone in on the problem. And I'm like, that I actually know the answer. And I don't need for you to just say it's yes or it's no. Like, I need the conversation.
Would you like me to share with you very quickly my map?
Yes.
Okay, this is one I made earlier. So if you see it on there. So I'm going to explain to it very quickly. All the men in the world are on this side, and all the women in the world are on this side. Very simple. But these men up here are much more masculine minded. So this is the bullet point man who you'll recognize, who always says, yeah, but when are we going to get this done? Whereas the philosopher is the Nelson Mandela. He's the thinker feeler, still works on a straight line, but he asks why. So why are we doing this? And he's very counterfoiled to this ruler. So the ruler says, we're going this way. And he says, why? How about observing everybody? So he's the great observer at the table. And the wise ruler uses him as the observer. Now, women are all circular, so there's much more congestion over here. But this lady is the magician. She's much more masculine minded, although she's truly female. And this has nothing to do with sexual preferences. But she says, what? What are we doing? Because I've got lots of ideas and I want to put that into practice. So while he's saying when, she's saying what, and he's saying why. And this sovereign here is our very queen-like collector of all the details, making the castle, asking who is the right person to be here. Now, of course, we pick up little traits, but these are the top ones. So it's listening to, if they're in a conversation and the ruler's saying when, and we got going why, he's going to get it. And if we say who, what, he's going, I'm out of here because I'm only interested in when. So, Demetrius, if you say in a meeting to the ruler, I hear your 3 points. May I summarize them? Blah, blah, blah. He nods. You have an opportunity to say, well, may I share? Is this the right time? When he nods, then you go. If you go before that, he's going to block you. Now, I'm doing this very simply because the goal is to get to an authentic harmony output, which is in business profitable and in life is happy. And so with women, we're much more complex and we often pick up all the energy here of relationships and circulation and multitasking. And when men look over the parapet here and go, I don't understand women, I thought they were all the same, he gets very confused. But when he does understand us, it doesn't mean we speak his language. It means we speak our language so that he hears. And a beautiful lady I know in South Africa who's a queen, but she's called the Woman King because she inherited the bloodline as the first woman in a century. She says, I can do everything a man can do, but I do it as a woman. And I use competency, not competitiveness or aggression, and just prove that I can do what I need to do, and then invite men to understand that. And she's working predominantly with a male community. So this is really where, and I'd be delighted to send you all
Oh,
my
I'm
books.
sorry. Before you put it down, will you talk about the philosopher? How does a woman speak to the why?
Well, the philosopher, I asked a very interesting ex-military government philosopher. I said, how do you lead? He said, I ask people why they want to be here. The ruler wouldn't ask that. So he is the real why man. He can sometimes be very quiet. So you have to draw him out. But he's the one who really understands, because he's got a sort of feminine energy, intuition. He understands more about the other three. And he definitely relates to girls and women, loves to go shopping with you, share, shopping advice, etc. Whereas the ruler won't do that. The ruler will just come and say, you really want that? So there's much more detail to this, and I'm going to be running a masterclass on this, which I'd love you all to come to. So I'll send you the details. But we need to place it into the culture. So even when we understand the characters around the table, we need to put it into a Malaysian context, a Tanzania context, a boardroom context, a breakfast room, a bedroom context. We are looking at what is the extreme negative point. So let me just share that as a brief thing. The ruler, when he's really bad, is a bit of a bully because he wants his way. The philosopher is a bit of a wimp when he's bad because he's hiding away. The sovereign can be a bit of a victim when she thinks everybody is against her. She's asking, who's doing that? And the magician is a bit of a bitch because she wants her ideas going forward. And I like to make people laugh about that because I'm a magician and I'm not a bitch. So we can all be really, really good. But the main thing is to understand that everybody who's talking is coming from their own language point and also their own perspective and their own history. So when something goes wrong is the point at which to stop and say, can I manage this differently? When it's going right, we will just flow because we tune in to all these differences. Remember, we're all magnificently unique and different, not equal. We're all human beings. In that sense, we all breathe the same air and we're equal as human beings. But the idea for me is for you to know, as women especially, and I know we've got Thierry here as a man, is that we have the opportunity now, and also to not let AI and automation take over, as Erica pointed out. Actually be in a space of conversation with people. And if something's not feeling right, not tuning in to say, can I just pause? Can I just, and even if you say this classic line, that's a very interesting perspective. And then stop talking. Erica.
I just wanted that's brilliant. And I wanted to add something to Demetrius, which has worked for me in terms of people who are trying to solve something that you're not looking for a solution. You're just looking to speak out loud, particularly men. I just say, I just want to throw this out. I'm really just talking out loud with you. I'm not looking for a solution. Just would you hear me out? something along that line in the approach and set the stage with that and then proceed. Because, my husband will tell me a lot of times, he's like, men don't know what you're thinking behind what you're what you're not saying. Like, just say it. So I think when you set this stage, then they get it and don't jump into fix it or solve it for you.
Yes, I think that the challenge we have in a fast-paced world is that everybody's trying to sell you something, solve you something. There's a lot of noise out there. When I've run magical conversations where the rules are set, so in a time period like an hour, hour and a half, there's no judgment. You come from your experience. You literally say, well, in my experience of the conversation on the table, my experience is, it's very gestalt. If we do that, we pause from a judgment to an experience, and then we listen, and we're not trying to create answers out of the session. So I've run these in Malaysia, in the world, everywhere. And what happens when people obey those rules is they enjoy being there because they feel they're not being threatened. They can share from their experience. And they also feel they're not being invited to be anything other than themselves. And I found that people enjoy being there because it's a very different environment to the fast pace. You got to get this done. You got to get it out. You got to have results. Why haven't you done that? Where's your grades? All the stuff that we know happens in the world. So it changes the momentum, and it's not for every conversation. But one of my colleagues actually did this in South Africa with a top 3 men in a tech company. So these were probably potentially rulers, but 3 of them were invited to come, and 3 women, and they were going to discuss how women see corporate world. And they had an audience, and the rules were set. And after 90 minutes, they couldn't get rid of the audience. The audience was so entranced they wanted to stay. But the male lead, the top man, said to my contact, who was the female magician, black lady, he said to her, I didn't know this. Nobody told me these things. I've never been in this environment where I've stopped and I've listened. And he said, this is fantastic. This is much better than writing policy. Now, I think that's an incredible indictment of how we can have different conversations and don't make the assumption that men have any clue about what equality would look like for women. Your thoughts?
I agree with that. I think that, oh, that's so much to unpack, but I would say we need to get to a point where people are showing how to work with each other, examples, when your mother is teaching you to bake, she just doesn't give you the recipe, send you off to the kitchen. She is from an early age getting you to help, crack the eggs, or something a very small child can do. But
Yeah.
we don't learn any of these social, I don't know, what would you call it? These social
Well, I
ways.
think, yeah, I mean, I think it's just we sometimes don't stop and think about what we actually are doing. We just know it. I learned to sew at an early age from my mother showing me. I have no idea why I know what I know. I just know that I took to it, and in a different way to my sister. So, it happens. Rhonda, and then Neema.
Yes,
Rhonda?
I just wanted to mention this thing about people not knowing what they don't know. One of my very good friends here in Germany is originally from Somalia, and she runs the best women's consultation for FGM, feminine genital mutilation. She herself is a victim, and she runs this organization here in Germany because so many people come to Germany as migrants who have been through this before, but also that they have the story that if they live here, but they have a daughter, they take them back to Africa or wherever they came from and have their girls mutilated as well. And one time she was speaking to a man who had originally been in Africa, was an African citizen, I don't remember which country, had been married to a woman from his country, left, came to Germany, and married a German woman. And when she said to him, "But don't you realize your former wife had been mutilated and your German wife had not?" And he said, and this is very interesting to think about, and he meant this seriously, this was not him making a joke. "Well, my wife in Africa had black skin, and my wife in Germany has white skin. And I just thought that all African women were like that, and that all non-African European women were like this." It is amazing when
Yeah.
you really stop and think about what people know, or what we all assume that everybody knows. You know, the 4 agreements from Don Miguel Ruiz, don't assume anything, you know, that this gentleman, although he had an African wife and a European wife, he just thought that was the way it is. So we really have to be careful, in my opinion, about what, you know, what kinds of things we attach to people, because he really didn't know that there was something that had happened to this woman, because in Africa, the girls are taken aside, men are not part of this at all. He didn't understand what that was, just like you saying about baking or cooking or whatever. If people are never involved, they don't know what that means. That happens for very serious things in the world as well. And I
Yes.
think it's up to us to be not only intentional, but aware of what are those things that are happening in the world where we say, well, isn't it obvious? No, it's not obvious. And we need to talk about things. And that's really
Absolutely.
important. And thank you so much for the opportunity today. This has been very fascinating.
Thank you. We're coming to the end of the hour, and I've posted my book in the comment, and I love what Larissa has put there as well. There's loads and loads of archetypes. Caroline Mice has 86 archetypes. There's what do you call it? Divine archetype. There's so many. My archetypes are very much designed to be about how do we talk across the gender divide, and not just between men and women, but between women and women and men. And I would love for you to read my book. If you want to come to my masterclass, I would love that as well. And I'm going to be doing some classes with Neema, which I've already started with under 30-year-olds. And under 30-year-olds are very receptive to the ideas. Neema can confirm that. And one of the core things that I would like to share before I hand it over to Neema and we close is our core human right is to think for ourselves. Our core human right is to think for ourselves. And a lot of cultures and a lot of education don't let us think for ourselves. So explore who you are and listen when you do tune into something or you don't tune in. How does that feel? And how can you bridge the gap between people? So I'm delighted that you've been here, and I'm going to ask Neema to close us out. Neema, your last thought.
Thank you, everyone, for your inputs. And then I just love what Erica has written in the chat box, that we really need to start with the youth, because they need to start understanding. Although we have a generation, the Gen Zs are a little bit different with the millennials, but we still need to impact the change. And one of the conversations that I had in the past week with a minister of gender here in Tanzania was that men have been forgotten a lot, and then now they're coming out like inferior. So I don't know in that part of the world, but here that's what is happening, that women are becoming very strong economically, and they're driving change. So men are a little bit scared. So we really need to inject these conversations and these trainings to the youth, so that we can balance everything and be able to work together and create that custody world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Neema, and thank you all. And I love your question, Demetrius. And I was going to say welcome guys and girls. I don't know whether that's official as well, but I do remember one time in the very strict, I was addressing a women's conference and I actually said, hi girls, and I got absolute ripped out by a group of women who said, don't call us girls. But for me, girls, ladies, guys, girls, you got to, let's not get, I understand your good morning, fellas. It's an interesting one. We've got to point out how we feel. I think, to point out how we feel and is that appropriate without getting upset about it. Otherwise, it becomes too gritty an issue. But we got to finish now, and I absolutely love what you've all said. Thank you, Neema, for co-hosting this and for being a stalwart supporter of a joint custody world, which is my dream. And that joint custody world is in authentic harmony, and we all play our part to make sure the music of the future is harmonious and healthy and wise. As I would say, women and wise men will change the world. Please follow me on LinkedIn. I would love to come on your show, Siobhan. I would love to keep up with all of you. And please let me know your thoughts. You'll find me on LinkedIn. If you haven't found me already, please do. And Neema, a last thought?
No, I just want to connect with Shibon. Please let's connect. I sent you my email in the chat box.
Excellent. Let's all keep connected to each other. It's been a delight to be here this morning. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.